Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Dr. Jorge Valdes. Today I want to address a subject that a lot of times that I have struggled with. As we look at the world and of faith, less specifically the Christian faith, one of the things that I had the hardest time ever dealing with was the fact of how somehow everybody believes that God's talking to them. So therefore, really in reality, and I'm not saying he doesn't, I have no idea. All I know is that when I decided to commit my life to Christ or to follow Christ, I was an atheist in 1990, September. And I struggled. I struggled all the way. Beginning, like I said before, in many of my channels, I've said, at first I began to just read the Bible as a historical book. The Old Testament has great stories, and some of them are said to have been true. Then I began to read the New Testament as a book of morals. Because at the end of the day, moral people do not cheat, steal, or lie. But I always struggle with the fact of how so many people said that, or whenever they want to justify something, they're like, well, I prayed about this and God told me not to do this. Or I prayed about this and you're not supposed to be my roommate, or you're supposed to be my friend, or many, many, many other things. Or even worse, I've seen some man abandon their entire family because somehow God spoke to them and God told them to go to the mission field and leave everything behind. I have a hard time dealing with that. I have a hard time dealing with the fact that a God would ever tell a husband to abandon his family, wife, and children to go serve him, when I believe that the biggest mission field is right in our home. So how do we deal with the fact, even about prayer? I mean, if you ask yourself, if you really think about it, do we really need to even pray? I believe that God is omnipotent, omniscient, and merciful. In other words, one without the other two do not work. He's omnipotent, that he knows everything, omniscient, that he is ever powerful, and merciful, that he has mercy on us when we deserve more or worse than what we have received. So then I struggle with the fact, well, why even pray? I mean, if God is my Father, as I believe he is, or the Bible tells me, why would I pray? I mean, my children do not have to pray to ask me for things or for me to take care of the important needs in their life. So there's a lot of debate about that, and I can go into that all the way down the road and talk about, for me, how different verses in the Bible say you have not because you ask not, and how to correlate that with the fact that God knows everything already. So the truth is the matter. So many times when we pray for God, give me a better job, a lot of these things that we call prayer will probably be answered anyways. You're either going to get the job or not. But what I want to focus in and narrow in is in God talking to people. So we go back to 1990. I'm a diehard atheist. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in the Bible. I don't believe in any of that. I decided to turn my life towards God because I ran out of options. I'm honest. I tell people the prayer that I said that day, it wasn't a prayer, it was almost like a conversation. And it was like, hey, God, number one, I don't believe you exist. Number two, if you do exist, you're looking at me and say, George, you're so bad, I don't want you up here. But number three, if you're willing to change my heart, change me as I am. I can't become better to follow you or anything. And the truth is that I don't even know if all this is a lie. All I know is that this guy that's been witnessing to me never really preached to me. But I always saw a joy in this man that I didn't see in a lot of people, and that I definitely did not see. And to me, he lived in a very little world. So what was there for him to be happy about? He had an old car, married to the same woman for 25 years, little house, and lived, an average middle class life. I'm making millions of dollars a month, dating the most beautiful woman in the world, have $1 million worth of car, jets, and all that, and I'm miserable. How can this guy be happy and me miserable? It would take me many, many years to see why he was happy and what eventually ended up making me find meaning and joy for my life. So, when I said that prayer, again, I did not believe it. And then at the same time, if I was to, let's say I had believed it, I would have shortly thereafter stopped believing it. Because, many people tell you, and it's a lie, give your life over to God and everything's going to be well. The prosperity gospel, the biggest BS in the world. People say, hey, give me money and God's going to give you 10 times more. And what happens when he does not? Then you didn't give enough, or you were not important? And we see this televangelist, saying that God told them to get this big old jet. Well, that's not the Jesus that I read about and I knew in the Bible. The Jesus I read about in the Bible told the rich man, hey, sell everything, give it to the poor. He was always giving everything and had nothing. So how is it somehow? Well, they'll justify and they have all kinds of reasons and they know the Bible well. Well, one of the very famous televangelists that first fell was in prison during the time I was in prison. And he admitted he didn't even read the Bible. Didn't even know what the Bible said. All he knew was that he would get in front of TV and he would start talking about the Bible and talking about verses and prayer and how God was going to bless you and all of these plans that God had. When he raised $1 million, he'd get off TV. That's the truth. I've seen many him in Canada. A wonderful producer of 100 Huntley Street, he asked for water. When the guy brought him a glass of water, he just knocked it out of his hands because he only drinks Perrier. So how do we deal with that fact? So let me go back. Why I would have, if I had believed that God was real, immediately I would have given up. Well, because, of course, so many people tell you, you're a new person. Everything is going to be fine when you come to God. Well, you know what? Not really. Maybe for some, but not for me. My life went from worse to worse. It became a living hell. Within 3 months of saying that prayer, and again, not believing that God was real or existed, I was arrested. And I was sent off back to prison for crimes I had done years ago. My dad was diagnosed with cancer and was given less than a year to live. My ex-wife disappeared with my children. I didn't see him for 2 years. And the judge tells me that he's going to give me a life sentence. That doesn't seem to be a person that just changed his life and now wants to be a godly person, wants to follow God. How does that person correlate to the fact that, holy cow, maybe the prayer that I said was real. Maybe God looked at me and said, hey, you're too bad, just stay down there. That's what I thought for a long, long time. So anyway, but I went on and I didn't turn back only because, again, I had no choice. Where was I going to turn back to? I couldn't find joy in all the millions that I had. I couldn't find joy in the many, many women that I had, or the mansions, or the jets, or the cars. So where was I going to go? What the hell did I have to lose? We've heard that so much lately, haven't we? And that's how I truly, truly felt. What the hell did I have to lose? So I decided I'm going to follow God, and that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to become a little better every day. And then things were supposed to change in many, many ways. But I'll tell you one example of why it's so horrible with these people that are constantly telling them that God is telling them this and God's talking to them. Let me pause for a minute. I decided to follow God. Now it was 1990, so 31 years ago. I still have never heard God talk to me one time. A lot of people will say, wow, what a heretic. How can you say that? I never heard him. What do you want me to tell you? Maybe he doesn't speak Spanish. I don't know. But I've never heard him. Now, there's all the other evidences that God has worked miracles in my life, and I'll tell you about those. But as far as God talking to me, not once did I ever hear it. So we go to prison, and I'm trying to change my life. I'm reading more of the Bible. A guy comes in there and says, hey, you want to be set free? Read the Bible. I say, how many chapters? He says 10. I read 20, just in case his math was a little bit off. And then I was sent off to Jessup, Georgia. And I read one specific time when I really came to grips with the fact that, hey, there's no way I could be a Christian. And that was that at Jessup, Georgia, they only allowed us to watch TV at night, on Saturday night, and they would lock us down into the TV room till about 1 o'clock in the morning. Now, I had a roommate called Gene, and he was a super godly man, and he really was, he seemed like you thought that Jesus was walking, and he was holy, and he was just a great guy, really, really a nice guy. I think later on in life didn't quite turn out so nice. But anyway, and I wanted to be in that TV room. What was the problem with the TV room? Well, that the program that every inmate wanted to see was Howard Stern. And during this time was when Howard Stern had that show, The Lesbian Connection, or The Lesbo Connection. And I wanted to see it, and I enjoyed it. And I would go back, but Gene refused to go. He's like, no, God don't want me there. And I'm like, well, I want to see it. I went, and I saw it, and then I would go back, and I would feel guilty. And then I would come to grip with the fact that, well, you know what? It's been a lie all along. You know, God doesn't love me. God doesn't care about me. And God doesn't want me around. Because, I mean, if Gene is a Christian and he don't want to watch this Howard Stern lesbo connection, so how can I be a Christian? It took years to realize that, you know, we all struggle and it's a journey. The true faith conversion is a journey. You can't make a leap, you know, an enormous leap between being an atheist and being a believer, or being an atheist and being a person of faith. I mean, my faith relied upon the power that I had. That was my faith. If people wanted a God, I was God to them. So how do you make that huge leap? Reciting a verse, dear Lord Jesus, come into my heart, accept me, blah, 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 blah. Really? Is that how it works? And then there's no evidence, no change? There's no lightning strike or lightning bolt from heaven that changes you? And then what are we seeing today? And one of the reasons that I really ended up at Wheaton College telling people my story. I didn't want to tell nobody my story. I got out of prison in April. I had till December to finish my master's, and I was going to go out to do a Ph.D., and no one would have known who I was, in and out. Until this young man, Jason Rosima, came to my house, and he said, you know, George, I don't think that God is real. My parents are pastors. I've been raised in the church all my life. You know, I've been the head of my youth group all my life. I'm about to graduate from Wheaton College, and I finally come to the realization that God is not real. God doesn't exist. I've been lied to. And it was like something just hit me, and I went, holy cow, I don't want to tell this guy my story. But I did. I told him my story. And then I told him how I believed that God was real and the miracle that had happened in my life. But you know, one of the things that brought about a lot of the miracles was my faith and belief that I had to change and I had to make hard decisions. You know, it's like, where are you at in life right now? Do you like your job? Wonderful. I don't care if you're a janitor, whatever the hell you are. If you love it, wonderful. If you hate it, well, then you know what? Just get out. Because if not, you're like that mice that sits on a hot plate and dances around the plate, and people think the mice dances, but the mice ain't dancing. There's people putting heat underneath the plate. But the mice ain't got common sense to jump off the plate, and that's how we are a lot of times. We're like a mouse. And we continue to be jumping around in that plate, and we just don't leave, don't jump off. And we have to. But what brings me to this is the biggest problem I see. We have an enormous mental health problem in America, probably all over the world. But we are in denial because we're the greatest country in the world, we're the greatest people, we're the most godly people, and the truth is, what do we have to be depressed about? I mean, most of us have money, most of us have wonderful homes and live in wonderful places. What do we have to be depressed about? Well, mental health is real, people. It is real. It's a disease, and it's an animal. And the more we ignore it, the more it destroys so many lives. So, coming to today's subject, what happens when a young man or a young lady prays and prays and prays? They've been raised a Christian life all their lives, and they are told to pray. The prayer will change their lives. What happens all of a sudden when nothing changes? Do they tell themselves, you know, God cares for me, He will answer my prayers, or God don't give a damn about me? Because I can tell you cases where they reach that point where they say, God don't care about me, God don't give a damn, and you know what they do? They take their lives. Because so many times in life, and I know that for a fact, because I lived it, when you have no reason for living, it's a damn good reason for dying. But the truth of the matter is that God does care. And God receives people right where they're at. And that transformation from not believing in a God to believing, that transformation from having faith, that transformation from being angry at the world and being empty and all of a sudden finding meaning for your life, it's a long transformation. It might be instantaneous for some, I don't know. But for me, it's taken 30 years. And it's still changing my life. I still struggle with so many things. I have an amazing wife that holds me accountable, but if I did not, God knows what I would have done. Would I go back to a life of debauchery? Was my transformation not real? Was my confession not real? No. You know, there's a little verse in the Bible where the Apostle Paul says, the things I don't want to do is what I keep doing. Think about that. Was he talking about not having breakfast? Was he talking about not praying? Or was he talking about things that he thought were not right? And he kept doing it, even though he didn't want to do it. Because, yeah, there was this big transformation in the Apostle Paul. But he still struggled, people. And that's what we need to come to grips with, the fact that we do struggle, that there is things in our life that are very, very, very difficult. And, we just got to have that patience and that faith. So how do I deal with the fact that, for me, God has never talked to me? Do I ask him to talk to me? No, because I believe that he cares. Like my father. My father loved me and adored me and would always do what was right for me. I didn't have to always ask him. He was always there for me. So that's how I look at God. So what do? My little secret is, whenever I have a big decision to make, I write down a line of paper and I put pros and cons. And if the pros are, a lot more than the cons, I go with that. If the cons are a lot more, I go with that. But when it's pretty close, this is my prayer. God, open the door you want me to go through and close the one you do not want me to. And it's how I've lived my life. Has it always worked out that way? Probably not. But it's brought me tremendous satisfaction. I look back in my life and I know that God is real. Why? If nothing else, because everything the world had to offer did not give me joy. And when I decided to follow this unknown God, it's like oxygen. We don't see oxygen, but without it we can't breathe. And to me, I don't see God. He don't speak to me, but without him I can't live. When I made that decision, knowing that he would meet me right where I was. He didn't say, hey, George, stop liking pornography. Hey, George, stop, having sex with multiple women. Hey, George, stop cursing. Hey, George, stop on and on and on. No, he did not. I believe he just accepted me right where I was. I had to pay the consequences for the bad choices I made. It ain't judgment. God doesn't go around punishing people. I don't believe that. We punish ourselves. It is that simple. But yet we got people saying, oh, look what's happening. God's going to punish you. Don't do this. How we tell our kids all our lives. God is going to punish you. God's going to do this to you. If you do this, God sees everything you do. Yeah, he sees everything, but God ain't going to punish them. They're going to punish themselves by a bad choice that they made. What God is going to do is, he's going to overlook that. And he's going to give him the chance to redeem himself, to become better. That's what I try to do with prison ministry. My only ministry is to send books to prison. Why? Number one, because I know how dark that place is. And so that men and women and children who are suffering an unjust system can find hope and meaning for their life, and above all, redemption. That they can know that no matter what they've done in their lives, there's always a second chance. They're not defined by their past. We're defined by the choices that we make on a constant basis. It's like mistakes. I tell my children, listen, there's no such thing as mistakes. You do something, it doesn't work out, it's a learning lesson. If you do it again, it's not a mistake, it's just stupidity. Should have learned the first time. So that's how I look at situations like that. And it's all about the mindset that I have. So I love God. I talk to him just like I talk to my father, because I believe he's a father. I say pray. If you want to know how to pray, just look at how Jesus prayed. When the apostles came to him and said, Lord, show us how to pray. And he said, this is how you pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, how holy is your name. Your kingdom come, that will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give me this day my daily bread. And please forgive my trespasses, as I have been forgiving those who trespass against me. Lead me not into temptation, but deliver me from evil. It's that simple of a prayer. And it is a powerful prayer. The question is, do you want God's will in your life, or do you still want your will? That's something you need to ask yourself. So if God says go into a corner and don't pray out loud like the Pharisees and the Sadducees do in the temple, but simply have a conversation with God, then what is up with all those mega televangelists with those long prayers and how God's going to give people all this stuff and all that, and at the end, none of it works out? What's up with that? Think about that. So for me, I trust God. I love God. When I make mistakes and make bad choices, I'm the one that suffers the consequence. He doesn't punish me. Has he talked to me? Perhaps in ways that I have no idea. But the way that people say that God talks to them, I don't believe it. He might to some, but I would just wager that if God was here and we could go and ask him, I would wager on the side that he does not. He does open doors he wants us to go through. He closes other ones. He's given us a free will for our life, for us to do as we please and then suffer or have joy. That's how I believe that God works. So when people tell you, or when you pray and you feel that God doesn't care about you, He does. When you pray and you feel that God doesn't listen to you, He does. And so many of the things that you're going to ask God to give you, He's probably already got it all in motion to give it to you. And a lot of times, God's greatest prayer, like Garth Brooks said, is unanswered prayers. See, I believe God answers all the prayers. He says yes, no, or later. But He does. So He's our Father. He's a good Father. See you next time on the Narco Mindset YouTube channel.